So now, as I said, I want you to look at your watches. I want you to remember the date. I want you to remember where you're sitting or standing. Because absolutely positively, what I'm going to share with you in the next few minutes is probably the most significant scientific breakthrough in the history of man. Bigger than landing on the moon. Bigger than anything that you have ever seen or heard of. Now, granted, when I was first exposed to it, and I'll tell you a short story about that in just a second, I absolutely thought it was science fiction. I'll go one step farther than that. I thought it was magic. And there's a great quote. It says that any technology that is sufficiently advanced is indistinguishable from magic. That's what this potentially was when I first saw it. So, let me give you the short version. I'm a researcher. I've done over 1,500 lectures all over the world as we're talking. My first book is coming out very, very shortly. And in my research, I got to meet and work with some of the most incredible scientific minds in the world dealing with health and wellness, and more recently, living healthier longer. So what happened is I discovered this scientist. His name is Dr. William Andrews, who's considered the world's leading. His field is what's called population genetics, but genetics is good enough for us lay people. And he's also a microbiologist. And Dr. Andrews and his team, well, Dr. Andrews and his team in particular, were responsible for proving and discovering the human enzyme called telomerase, which I mentioned when I talked about Ageless Essentials. And so I called up Dr. Andrews on the phone after about 3 months, convinced him that I wanted to just talk about his research and my lectures, flew out and met with him. And within 15 minutes of meeting him in his office in a big lab with all these people in white coats and these geniuses, I said, Dr. Andrews, time out. He said, what's wrong? I said, what's wrong? Tell me this is science fiction. He says, oh no, Peter. He said, do you know what our motto is at this company? I said, no. He said, we are going to cure aging or we're going to die trying. Guess what? They were deadly serious. I spent the whole day with him that day, and it completely and utterly blew my mind. Now, what did Dr. Andrews and his geniuses done? For the last 15 years, and spending about $30 million in research, they had tested various compounds on human cells to determine if they could in some way support telomeres. Now, they concentrated primarily initially on prescription drugs and chemicals. And in those 15 years, they tested 304,000 chemicals. 304,000, okay? Now, there had been a scale developed called the HeLa scale. And if you remember my story relating to Henrietta Lacks, who died in 1951, and yet her cells are still alive today, her cells would represent, on a scale of 0 to 100, 100. The good way to think about it is think about a radio wave or a vibration. So her cells are obviously vibrating at this incredibly high frequency. Well, they could test other cells injected with chemicals to see if there was a vibration in the cell, and they compared that vibration to her vibration, and they got an indication on that scale of 0 to 100 that they were moving in the right direction. The good news was, over the course of those 15 years, they got more than 100 substances that created a vibration. Now that sounds good, except all of them, within 5, 6, 7 days, the cells died because those substances were so toxic that although temporarily it looked like they might support telomeres, in the long run they actually killed the cell. Well, that was until 2010. Because you see, after that day, I was speaking in Reno, Nevada, where Dr. Andrews' lab is. His company's called Sierra Sciences. You can Google this, you can look it up, because he's the most famous guy in the world in aging. And anyway, he came to my lecture, and he was so impressed with the nutritional technology. And, a side note, Dr. Andrews is an ultra-marathon runner, meaning he runs 100 miles continuously, back-to-back, like 4 marathons in a row. He's been doing it for 15 years. And after my lecture, he came up, despite running 80 miles a week to get in shape, I've got 15 pounds around my middle I can't lose, and I want to try this nutritional cleanse. I said, okay. So he goes on it, just like clockwork. Day 12, he lost all that weight that he couldn't lose. Called me up and said, what's in this stuff? And I said, look, it's way over my head, the questions you're asking me. So I said, let me get the man who formulated this, John Anderson, who's considered arguably the world's greatest nutritional formulator, who put together all of this nutritional technology, who moved nutritional science 500 years into the future, who had done in his lifetime over 2,300 nutritional formulas for over 600 companies, did billions in sales. So I called up John Anderson. I said, John, have you ever heard of Dr. William Andrews of telomeres? And he says, no. And I said, well, Google it and call me back in a half hour. John calls me back in 5 minutes and says, you get that guy on the phone. And John Anderson and Peter Greenlaw and Bill Andrews had that call in about April of 2010. and we talk about that call in all sincerity, and we say, that is the call that changed the world. Because you see, after that conversation, which lasted for about an hour, I thought to myself, what would people have paid to be on this call today? What would people have done to have been able to listen to what these two geniuses talked about? So what we decided was, July 3rd of 2010, that Peter Greenlaw, John Anderson were going to fly to Reno and meet with Dr. Andrews. And Dr. Andrews was going to go through this whole process. Well, at the end of the day, John Anderson was super impressed. He turns to Dr. Andrews and he goes, you know, Dr. Andrews, I know you've spent $30 million in research. You've tested 304,000 compounds, but you're looking in the wrong place. Dr. Andrews goes, what are you talking about? He says, the answer's in the earth. The answer's in natural botanicals, minerals, and rare earth elements. And he says, I'll tell you what I'll do, John Anderson says. I'll send you some compounds. So September, about 60 days later, John Anderson sends to Dr. Andrews 15 compounds. Not 1,500, not 15,000, 15. And number 11 was one of the highest indicators on that score that they had ever seen, and the cells were still alive 7 days later. They had never seen that. You know what their reaction was? He must have gotten lucky. He won the lottery. Well, a few weeks later, when he sent 25 more compounds and got 5 more indicators on that scale, Sierra wasn't laughing anymore. And basically what happened that day is the world changed. Because now, for the first time ever, we had something that looked like it could support the telomere with no side effects, and the cells kept on. Well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? That product is here. It's called Product B. And although I was fortunate myself, and Dr. Andrews and John Anderson were the first 3 human beings on planet Earth to take it, now hundreds of thousands of people are now consuming this on a daily basis. Now, why would they do this? And how does this fit into the 5 pillars? And how is this nutritional technology revolutionary, going to change the world? Here's why. Dr. Andrews was the one who taught me about the 4 things who speed up aging. The number 1 cause was toxicity. The number 2 cause was obesity. The number 3 cause was stress. And the number 4 cause was inflammation. Well, as you know, I went through the first 4 pillars of health. What do they deal with? Toxicity, obesity, stress, and inflammation. So now you've got this highway. You've got this pathway that's been laid out. So now you begin to take Product B as part of what? A nutritional system, a nutritional educational program, a nutritional opportunity to live healthier longer. Because what does Product B do? We believe that Product B is going to help the human body to live healthier longer, assuming that you're doing the other 4 things. You see, it's not an island unto itself. You could take it and I think you'd get some benefit. But you are going to so magnify, so enhance the potential properties of this that it's crazy. In my case, oh my gosh, more energy. I mean, I feel fantastic. You know, and like I said, I've been taking it as we're filming this for about 2 years. But so are lots of other people. And they're experiencing at least a feeling of youthfulness that they haven't had in years. That they now feel, you know what, maybe my best years are ahead of me. They're not behind me. So those are the 5 pillars of health, which make up the world's only nutritional system, but also, as Dr. Andrews says, the first and only true anti-aging, longevity, pathway to living healthier longer of anything he's ever seen. You got to understand, Dr. Andrews, he doesn't drink, he doesn't smoke, he eats organic, he's doing everything right. He realizes now it will never be enough again, even if you eat organic, even if you don't eat, you just drink water, you don't drink anything, sodas, whatever. It's still not enough because you still have to deal with toxicity. And even if you're not obese, you still have to deal with stress and inflammation. And let's say you think you even got those under control. You don't have toxicity under control. If you're breathing the same air I'm breathing today, if you're drinking the same water, if you're eating the same food, if you're using the same shampoos and soaps and all of these things that are causing this chemical invasion in our bodies, there is nothing on planet Earth like this. And I said this before, and I want you to, in closing, to just listen carefully to this. Number 1, just because it wasn't invented doesn't mean it wasn't possible. But more importantly, this statement. Once in a very great while, something so extraordinary happens that it changes the world. And the toxic world we're currently living in has been anxiously awaiting for the solution to appear. Ladies and gentlemen, it's here today. But it's not up to me, it's up to you. So now I say to you, What about you?